Brent, will you call roll?
I will. All right, Mr. Burgess.
Present.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Mr. Calgar.
Here.
Mrs. Faddis.
Here.
Mr. Quinn. Here. Mr. Lease is here. Mr. White.
Here.
He's here remotely.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Matt,
Second.
second from Willie. Any questions or comments about tonight's agenda? Hearing none. Mr. Lease?
All right. Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Calgar.
Yes.
Mrs. Faddis.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
Mr. Lease is a yes. Mr. White.
Yes.
All right. Well, that leads us to one of my favorite parts of the agenda, which is recognition. I'll turn it over to Dr. Jones.
And as you recall, we introduce an Extra Mile Award winner every month. And tonight's a special award winner. We have Kathy Herndon, who happened to nominate this Extra Mile recipient. And she's going to speak to the recipient. Come on up, Kathy, to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kathy Herndon, and I am the Special Education Site Coordinator that works with our population at our students that attend Juvenile Detention Center. And so in the month of April, we choose to honor John Penn as our Extra Mile Award recipient. John Penn is a team in our technology division, and he was nominated by me for his commitment to our staff and students at the Benton County Juvenile Detention Center. John has spent countless hours helping teachers and staff access instructional and assessment material through technology to keep our students learning and earning their diplomas. No matter when we call or request assistance, he is quick to respond and jumps in to help resolve any issues that arise. On one of his visits, he spoke with our students at the center about what they like to read. He took inventory of the available books in our center's library and then quietly purchased them from his own pocket, the books the students had mentioned they wanted. He did this with no fanfare. Center staff had to pull security footage to learn the identity of our gift giver. John personifies excellence in his profession interactions, but also with the empathy he generously offers to others. Please join us in celebrating John Penn.
John, do you want to say a word or two?
Sure. One of my favorite things about getting to work in education is that people who are do extra things is the norm. Like the vast majority of people that work for the district are deserving of this award, in my opinion. And also, it's a thing that's worth working for. Like when you put in, extra effort or extra time, it's not to, farther the bottom line of our company or something. Like the end benefit that comes out of that is, students get educated, and that's amazing. So thank you guys for making that endeavor possible.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And we have a special introduction tonight. Steve Vera wanted to introduce the SROs in our schools that you may have not met yet, and so take it away.
Thank you. President White, Dr. Jones, and members of the board I'm happy to introduce our newest members of our School Resource Officer Program. These gentlemen, some of them started at the beginning of the school year, some of them during the middle of the school year, and our most recent one will be starting in August. So it's my pleasure to introduce our most newest one. Officer Justin Butcher will be starting in August at Washington Junior High. He'll be replacing Officer Danny Henry, who is moving into Criminal Investigation Division. And Justin brings about 4 years' experience as an SRO from Hot Springs School District. So we're excited to have him. Next, we have Officer Chris Isabel. Chris is over at Fulbright Junior High School. He's replacing Josh Carlson, who moved over to Lincoln. And Josh he's been a school resource officer at the Russellville School District. And so we're happy to have him. Next, we have Deputy Micah Fleming from the Benton County Sheriff's Department. Micah's over at Grimsley Junior High. He started there from the opening day. And so we're really excited that he's there and he's getting acclimated to, the staff and the building. And then we also have Deputy Larry McConnell at Bentonville West. And he's getting his feet wet over there with the large size of the school and the population. And he's doing a great job. So we're really excited to have them with our program. And I just want to say that we want to thank the Bentonville Police Department and the Benton County Sheriff's Department for always providing top-notch candidates. We always have a large amount of candidates wanting this position, and they always provide top-notch because they know we expect the best. So we're happy with the relationship that we have. So I just want to welcome them and introduce them to you. I don't know if you have any comments or questions for them, but I just wanted to introduce them so you know their faces when you tour our buildings. So thank you.
Thank you for that. We appreciate y'all's work and serving the school district in your capacity. It's very valuable. So thank you very much. All right. All right, so that takes us to public comments, and public comments have been handled a couple ways the past 2 meetings. Now that we're open with some restrictions, we've still been accepting public comments virtually, and so we received some of those. All the board members were provided with copies of that and access to those comments, and so everyone's had a chance to review the comments that were sent to us virtually. And now for tonight's public comments, we have 8 people on the agenda to speak. As they each come in, we'll remind them that they each have 3 minutes to speak. Willie will be keeping time. We ask that everyone be respectful, and then also just to let everybody know that the building is open. So as future board meetings are held, you can come and provide your comments to the board. Steve, you want to listen? I guess Bethany's coming in. Bethany?
Yes, sir.
I know a lot of people couldn't hear me out there, so I'm just going to repeat. We were open for board comments tonight. We appreciate you coming to discuss what you want to discuss with us. We have a 3-minute time limit. Willie's going to keep that for us. He'll let you know when that time limit's up. And with the restrictions, we ask that once you're done, you can exit the building over here to your right, my left, that door.
I just had one quick question. My son did write a very short letter that would put me over my 3 minutes, and I didn't know if I could read this in his place.
That's a great question. We haven't had that yet, and we could have everyone do that. So I'm going to say if you can shorten yours and read his, that would be great, or lead with his and then go to yours.
Right, I was
Keep it to
thinking
3
that
minutes
as well.
for each person
Okay.
that comes to the microphone.
Yes, sir, I think I can, and I will start with his because I think as a child, his voice is most
Yes.
important. Hello, my name is Jet, and I go to Gamble. I am in 4th grade, and I think that kids shouldn't have to wear a mask in school because when you talk, your mask gets in your mouth, and it makes me feel uncomfortable when it rubs on my chin. When I talk, I can't read my teacher's lips when I can't hear her so that I can understand what she is saying, and it makes me sad when I can't see my friends' faces smile. So please take the masks away. Again, my name is Bethany. I do have 3 students in the Bentonville School District, 2 in elementary, 1 junior high, and they do all suffer from different educational disabilities. I'm going to start here. So Eric, I believe, said in the last meeting that no person is better than the other based on their mask belief, and that is something that I strongly believe in. Mrs. Faddis, you seem to take a different approach. You acknowledge that there are medical professionals who have provided science against the wearing of masks, especially in children, yet you chose to name call and state that essentially anyone who does not believe in the science of Debbie Jones is a podunk American. While I do believe that Dr. Jones is doing her best work in the situation we are in, I do not believe that we default to the Debbie Joneses. To my understanding, she is not a medical doctor. It is not a good decision to call the families that you represent podunk. You state state that the overwhelming amount of science supports masks, but I would argue that the overwhelming amount of media supports masks and quickly attacks and goes to work to discredit the medical professionals who speak out against it. You say people who don't want masks aren't listening to those that do, but you yourself, in this role of authority and in this public forum, chose to insult and make assumptions about an entire group of people who chose the science that does not support masks. You say you're concerned about the mental health, but you come from a perspective of fear-mongering and not understanding that there are children that are suicidal and self-harming due to the stress of the restrictions in school. You stated that the school board needed to vote in the way of the students and the staff, and I guess as a mother, I failed by not requesting that my small children of ages 8 and 10 email you. The 7 emails you stated you received is not an accurate representation of our student body of over 18,000. I will let you know that some of the children out front were my own, holding signs and hoping that you would hear their voices as well. Joe, I wanted to address when you said that Walmart is the thought leader of our community. They do contribute financially to our community, but the business decisions of a worldwide corporation should not hold so much bearing on our community simply because their home office is here. I'll just leave you with this, that in conclusion, 279,000 plus people occupy Benton County. As of April 19th, 194 cases exist. As of April 15th, according to arkansas.gov, there were 13 total active cases in the Bentonville School District of over 20,000 student staff. These numbers are not scary.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did that perfectly.
Thank you.
Don't have a good night. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, welcome back. Couple things. I know no one could hear me out there, so I just want to reiterate. We have 3 minutes, so we'd ask as soon as Willie says time that you end your comments. And also in these board public comments, we ask that you don't call out anybody by their individual name, so staff or board. So when you start speaking, your time will begin.
Awesome, thank you. Matt Bennett, welcome, I should say. Anyway, I need to apologize first for how I acted last board meeting. I let my emotions get the best of me, so I apologize. I quote again from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. Not to speak is to speak, not to stand is to stand. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. No right is held more sacred or more carefully guarded by the common law than the right of every individual to the possession and control of his own person, free from all restraint or interference of others, unless by clear and unquestionable authority of law. That was in a court decision back in 1891. I sat on the sidelines for too long as a parent. I hoped and prayed that those I elected would adhere to the principles and values that I hold dear. That has not happened, and thus I and many others, like the concerned parents you've seen here today, are come to hopefully make our voices heard. In the Arkansas School Boards Association literature concerning school boards, under the section School Boards Put Public in Education, it says, the decision to run for your local school board is one to which much thought and consideration must be given. Serving as a board member is one of the most important responsibilities that a citizen can undertake. If elected, the educational standards which you, together with your fellow board members, establish will affect the future of the students, the community, and society. It also states, school board members are most effective when members focus on the big picture. When boards focus too heavily on administrative issues, children suffer. A board member has no individual authority. Board members who run on a single issue or for personal gain often create discord in a district. That's pretty heavy. I would respectfully ask the board to evaluate their recent and future decisions. Do those decisions reflect the association's directives? And more importantly, do they favor families? And most importantly, do they favor children? A few issues that need to be addressed and of which we as parents will be monitoring. CRT, critical race theory. White privilege, rewriting of American history through the 1619 Project, transgender issues, in particular boys participating in girls' sports, CSE, comprehensive sexual education, a program put out by the NEA. None of these issues can be permitted in our schools. If they are permitted, discord will surely follow. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Kara Howard. Kara, I don't know if everybody could hear me, but
We can't hear you
Yep.
out there.
I'm just going to repeat it. So thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah.
We're keeping the comments to 3 minutes.
Yep.
Willie's going to keep our time. So
Thanks,
if it's
Willie.
Time, we'll ask that you exit back door.
Yep.
We're asking that the comments refrain from calling out any staff or board.
Okay.
And so your 3 minutes starts when you begin.
All right. Thank you. Again, my name is Kara Harvard. I was here last month. You probably remember me. I brought my army with me this time. And I'm here to share with you the disappointment I have in your decision to continue the mask policy in our schools the remainder of the school year. Except this time, I helped gather together many other families who also feel the same way. Science and evidence does not support your decision, and as a school board member, your duty is to adhere to state and federal laws pertaining to schools. You have not done that. The mandate has always stated that masks are not required for children under the age of 10. My kids are under the age of 10. And now masks are no longer required for anybody, yet you continue them. You have not adhered to the law. We came here today to fight for our freedoms. You have stripped us of our parental rights, and on what grounds? For too long, we've sat quiet, and I'm here to tell you that that ends today. We are very disappointed in our school board, and if you truly had the children's best interest in mind, you would lift the mask policy immediately because the masks are a detriment to our children. Last month, it was mentioned that the board received a handful of emails from students requesting to keep the mask policy in place. This concerns me greatly, that our students have been conditioned to wearing a mask, which gives them an incredible false sense of security, and it's saddening. They've lost their identity, and we need to undo our wrongs and restore normalcy as soon as possible to prevent further damage. The statistics that Brent shared about the increase, I was supposed to say his name. He shared some nice statistics last month that were staggering and for cause for alarm. The task force said that masks don't hurt, and that just isn't true. And those statistics prove it. The doctor on the task force said it himself that he was biased. And with a little research, I was able to find that there is an extreme conflict of interest between the task force and the school board. And it's disheartening that that was not made public before we considered the task force recommendation. My children have suffered greatly this year, and the board doesn't seem to be interested in wanting to end that suffering. We are in the midst of a mental health crisis, and I pray that your blinders can come down so that you can see the damage and stress that we have placed upon our children. And I sincerely hope that every member of this school board will do the right thing, which is to unmask the children and return our parental rights. Locally, our COVID numbers are rock bottom. So on what grounds do you have to continue the mask policy? And what right do you have to strip me of my parental rights? I plead with you tonight to reconsider your stance on masking our children and do the right thing and vote to remove the mask requirement in our schools effective today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, geez.
Ray?
Yes, sir.
I know people couldn't hear me out there, so I'm just repeating everything I've said as people walked in, but we're asking that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Willie's keeping our time, so when he tells you time's up, we'd ask that you leave through this door over here. We're also asking that your comments refrain from calling anybody out by name, both staff and board.
Not a problem.
When you start speaking, your time will start, so the floor is yours.
So, I've been kicked out of every school I've ever been in, but this is my very first time in front of a school board. I wasn't going to bring a bunch of facts to you guys. It would be like bringing sand to the beach at this point. So I thought I'd bring this beach ball to state my point. This beach ball reminds me of my children. It's colorful, it's light, it can be bounced around, and it floats. When I start putting things like masks on my kids, and depression, and anxiety, and all of those other things that these masks are doing to these kids with the isolation and all of those other things. On February 17th, CNN posted a town hall of the President of the United States, which a second grader asked the following: when will kids be able to get the vaccine? The President answered, and I quote, "First of all, kids don't get COVID very often. It is unusual for that to happen. The evidence so far is that children aren't the people most likely to get COVID. Number two, we haven't even done tests yet on children as to whether certain vaccines would work or not. You are the safest group of people in the world," he exclaimed. You are not likely to be able to be exposed to something and be able to spread it to mommy or daddy. It is not likely mommy or daddy are able to spread it to you either. So I wouldn't worry about it, baby. I promise you. So from that conversation, I ask you, why haven't we done tests for vaccines for kids? Because kids don't get COVID very often, as explained by the President of the United States. In fact, they get it so infrequently, there aren't enough children to test a vaccine on that have COVID. Also addressed by the President in this transmission is the transmission of the virus from children who don't have it to others who could catch it. Again, he said, you are not likely to be able to be exposed to something and be able to spread it to mommy or daddy. And it is not likely mommy and daddy are able to spread it to you either. The President of the United States on February 17th. So when we hear about the science, the study is over, the trial has expired, and the results are in. Kids seem to have a natural immunity to COVID, and we are robbing them of that luxury by imposing masks on them. These masks aren't protecting them from COVID, but they are ensuring they get exposed to problems much more serious for kids, such as depression, isolation, learning disabilities, social anxiety, suicide, and a culture of complete and unnecessary fear. I am here today as a father of an 11-year-old boy with Down syndrome. My primary function on this earth is to protect and care for my son. He is at far more risk on the drive to school than he is of catching and spreading COVID at school. My son has a host of health issues that if he were to catch—
your time's up. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't blame you for not wanting to hear the rest.
Thank you. Thank you.
President of the United States said that, by the way.
Hello, Liz.
Hi.
I'm repeating everything I've told everyone else that came in there because I know you can't hear me out there, but we're asking you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Yes.
Willie's our timekeeper, so when he says time, we ask that you exit through that door there just because of our restrictions. And then we also have a request that we don't name any staff or board in our comments.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. When you start talking, your time will start.
Okay. I'm proxy for Allison Lutz, who's currently at her job at a local OR. These are her words. Good evening. I'm a very concerned parent of children in Bentonville schools. I wanted to share with the board members very recent data that has been published showing that the masks have such a negative impact on our children. The National Center for Biotechnology Information, a branch of the National Institute of Health, says that wearing face masks has been demonstrated to have substantial adverse physiological and psychological effects. These include hypoxia, hypercapnia, shortness of breath, increased acidity and toxicity, activation of fear and stress responses, rise in stress hormones, immunosuppression, fatigue, headaches, decline in cognitive performance, predisposition for viral and infectious illnesses, chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Long-term consequences of wearing face masks can cause health deterioration, developing and progression of chronic diseases, and premature death. This study is one of many that continues to show evidence that forcing the children to wear face masks is inappropriate at the very least. I'm asking the board again to reconsider their decision to continue to force children to wear masks at school. Many school districts in our area and throughout the state have listened to their parents and community and have altered their mask mandates, allowing families the choice of whether or not to have their children wear a mask in school. I think that Bentonville, as an open-minded community, should enact similar measures and allow children the opportunity to finish the school year with this choice about wearing masks. My children do not wear masks anywhere except for school throughout the week. No masks are worn at home, playing with friends, practicing sports, attending church, shopping at stores, etc. However, they are enslaved by these masks only while at school. Board members touted consistency as a goal to continuing the mask protocol. I can assure you, wearing masks at school is the primary inconsistency in their routine. As a parent that expects for our elected board members to make the best decisions for our children, I believe that mounting evidence is showing that the current protocols are certainly not in our children's best interest and are even hurting our children. I urge the board to revisit this issue and hear the science and evidence supporting the discontinuation of mask mandates for our children. Thank you for your time. That's respectively Allison Lutz. On behalf of myself, I would like to say that I am grateful for your service, your time, and your commitment to our community and our children. And I would love for you to know that as long as you uphold our constitutional rights, you will have the parents of Bentonville and their families behind you 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Ryan. I'm repeating everything I've told everyone that's come in here. So just to remind you, we have 3-minute time limit. Willie's keeping time for us. So when he says time, we'd ask that you end your comments and then you can exit that door. That's where we're asking everyone to leave. We're also asking that we don't name staff or board in your comments. So
You got it.
once you start speaking, your time will start.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Ryan Harward. I've come to tonight to share my thoughts on what I consider to be an encroachment of human rights. Some might think that that's a radical statement to make over something as small as a mask mandate. But to recall from history, I believe that the British probably thought that the tax on tea for the colonies was a small thing too. The problem with both of these cases is that individuals are being forced without being heard. Now, I understand and can appreciate that during times of emergency, there are measures that may need to be taken. Examples of this include the various military drafts throughout our nation's history. However, it is important to note that when the emergency is passed, the exercise of those emergency powers ceases and full rights are returned to the people. The yielding of the emergency powers has already taken place on the state level, and our levels of COVID in this area are extremely low, as has already been shared by previous speakers. So I would ask why those rights are not being returned within our schools. And further than that, why are we not celebrating the wins that we see all around us? It's almost as if we, instead of celebrating, we want to prolong the suffering that we've experienced over the past year. In the last board meeting, healing from COVID-19 was compared to a surgery. And having personally treated many various post-surgical and post-traumatic cases in my own practice, I can tell you that the best health outcomes are for those individuals who are willing to work through the discomfort of rehabilitation as quickly as possible. Those who are complacent or scared often end up with some degree of impairment. Just think of it. A surgery is significant as a total knee replacement. That individual is expected to be weight-bearing and taking steps on the same day. Why the urgency to get back to normal after a surgery? It is because when muscles aren't used, they atrophy. When joints aren't used, they develop adhesions and become immobile. And when neural pathways aren't stimulated, they degrade. Is this what we are looking for? Are we wanting social impairment for our children and community? I don't believe that this is what any of us want, and I believe that the way to take steps to healing is by getting rid of the fear, celebrating the wins that we see all around us, and giving individuals back the freedom to choose. I urge you tonight to reconsider the vote of last month and begin the healing journey today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Casey.
Hello.
Hello, I'm repeating everything I've told everybody else.
Absolutely,
So here
sounds
we go. 3 minutes, time limit. Willie's our timekeeper. When he says time, we ask that you would leave through that door. It's just our COVID procedures here.
Cool.
We also ask that you don't use this time to call out any staff or board members. So as soon as you start speaking, your time will begin.
Sounds good. Innocent until proven guilty. One of the foundations of our society and our democracy. I would assume that each and every one of you would agree with that ideology. Let me submit something else to you. Healthy until proven sick. This is also something that is the foundation of our society. When you have an interaction with someone, a coworker, a cashier, a passerby, you assume that they're healthy, unless there's some other context clues that tell you otherwise. This last year, our global society has undergone a major shift that I fear will be difficult to undo. We now live in a sick until proven healthy society. If you stop and think about that shift and what that implies for all the parts of your life, just like if our society was guilty until proven innocent, that's what scares me. Now, because we live in this type of society, each and every interaction you have with another person, you now assume that they are or could be sick. Let's take that one step further. Let's look at this through a child's eyes. Imagine a child trying to navigate this complex shift in our society, especially young ones. I came here tonight to express my concern that some of the policies that this board has voted on are promulgating this very ideology. We have all heard about people, children of all ages, be terrified of COVID-19. This is because we have shifted as a society where we assume others are potentially sick. The reality is, this has always been the case. Every day, every moment, you take a risk assessment. You being here tonight is a risk assessment. You are taking the risk that you could get sick tonight, and that you driving to and from this meeting, something could happen. You could get in an accident. The list goes on, right? Every day, every moment is a risk assessment. These risk assessments are part of our daily lives, and forcing our children to wear masks is you making that risk assessment for me as a parent. You are taking away my ability to make risk assessments for my children. We are staring straight down the barrel of a very real and very scary mental health crisis in this country. When do we wake up and see what is happening, that mask wearing and fear mongering are causing real issues in real kids in this community? When do we wake up? When are you going to realize the solution you are pushing is worse than the problem itself? Thank you.
Thank you. One more? Donnell. Thank you for coming tonight, Donnell. I'm going to repeat what I've told everybody else. We've got a 3-minute time limit. Willie's our timekeeper, so when he says time, we ask that you end your comments. We're asking everyone to exit through that door. And then we're asking you to use your comments not to call anybody out from the staff or the board. Okay, so as soon as you start speaking, your time will begin.
Thank you. My name is Donnell Grant, and I have 3 kids in the Bentonville School District, ages 7, 10, and 13, elementary, middle, and junior high. As a mother, I teach them to make their voices heard, to research what they're being told before blindly following, and to stand strong in their God-given convictions. My 7-year-old daughter asked Santa on her Christmas list to please not have to wear a mask anymore at school. My well-behaved AB student, 10-year-old son, has been put in in-school suspension 3 times for touching his mask too much, removing it, or wearing it wrong. This has caused a lot of humiliation, anxiety, and has made him think of himself as a bad kid for simply wanting to breathe. My 13-year-old has a beautiful voice, yet her concerts have consisted of trying to project her voice beyond her mask and feeling the frustration of a stifled talent. A mask represents a hand over their mouth to sit down and shut up and listen no matter what they're told and don't ask questions. This is not how I want to raise my children, and I resent the oppression of their God-given gift of the ability to see their teachers, friends, and colleagues smile and just simply have a breath of fresh air. Please let our children breathe again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? That's it? Okay. Well, that will take us to review of the calendar. Looks like we have several items coming up. May 6th is the Service Awards Teacher of the Year banquet, which is at Bentonville West at 6 p.m. We have our graduations, the BHS commencement and the BWHS commencement on May 15th, beginning at 8 a.m. for BHS and then beginning at 7 p.m. for Bentonville West. We have our next Board of Education meeting May 18th. And then I know everyone's looking forward to the last day of school on May 27th. Memorial Day is on the 31st, and then our June board meeting will be on June 15th. Any questions or comments on the calendar? All right. Well, that takes us to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Matt.
Second.
Second by Joe. Any comments or questions on the consent agenda items?
May I point out just a couple of things from the consent agenda? You might notice on the transportation report, there's a new addition there that it has the number of route drivers. The second bullet, very bottom of the page, 110 route drivers. Drivers who returned, if you remember when we added the packages, the $50 pay for a morning shift or afternoon shift, we paid the test fee and the CDL licensing fee for bus drivers. They brought back 5 that had previously been bus drivers, and they have 2 that came from new driver training, and they have 3 transportation office workers that have CDLs. And then we will have this as a continuing report every month. I also want to point out that the school choice capacity resolution is in this month's agenda, and this is a reminder, and it is published, that school choice applications are due on May 1.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions? All right.
Yeah, I have a comment for May 1 means May 1. It's no different than renewing your driver's license or any of the other multitude of things we do on a day-to-day basis. We had a long series of special meetings last year. It's just a deadline, like any other deadline, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lees, if you want to call roll.
Well, this is for the consent agreement, item 6A. Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Cowger?
Yes.
Mrs. Faddis?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Lees is yes. Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay, that takes us to the content agenda. Item A is a status briefing from Dr. Jones.
Okay, I have a very brief COVID status report. And this is an update. On March 30th, the Arkansas Department of Health and the Department of Education released updated guidance that aligned with the CDC guidance, which reduced the space requirement within the classrooms when students were wearing masks. So that was reduced to 3 feet. I also wanted to note that last Friday, in partnership with Collier Drugs, students 16 years and older who voluntarily received a vaccination, they were able to do so at both of our high schools, and 350 immunizations were given. That's the update.
Any questions for Dr. Jones on her update?
Hey, Dr. Jones, real quick. Not necessarily related to the content that you provided, but has there been any thought about rolling into the summer? They got what the district is going to recommend to the board related to summer programs related to wearing a mask, that sort of thing. We haven't talked about that before. So
Just as a reminder, our mask policy is void after the last day of school. And so we will continue to have summer engagement programs, different things, but we will not have a policy in place to require face coverings.
So like Adventure Club, all those things.
That's correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. One of the great things about living here is the depth of talent. The physician from Mercy who ran our task force, I thought was a remarkable guy. Funny, witty, bright, an accomplished physician. And early on, when we needed advice, we asked him to run a task force. The superintendent of this district never, ever claimed to be a physician. I never heard anything come out of your mouth that you claimed to be a physician. I did hear you say, let's find the best local talent to advise us. I want to talk about conflict. We've got multiple board members, and we already have, who are married to employees of the district. I'm a patient of the Mercy health system, so I don't know if that makes it a conflict for me to listen to that task force if it's run by a Mercy physician. But to say that a board member who has a spouse who happens to work at Mercy has some type of conflict, I find that as ludicrous as anything I have heard in here in a long time. We're a small town. If perhaps that individual who ran the task force was a questionable choice. It might be one conversation, but the guy was brilliant. And that task force, which included a lot of smart people, led us through the early days of this. It was one of the best things we ever did. Just for the record, the superintendent never claimed to be a physician. All she claimed was, let's put together some talent to help guide us into the early days. So I would just make that observation as we talk about COVID tonight.
Thank you, Joe. You're welcome. Any other comments before we move on from this informational item? All right, well, thank you very much, Dr. Jones, for keeping us up. They get briefer and briefer, and I think that's a good sign, right?
It's a good sign.
Or more brief. All right, item B, we're going to be looking at a GMP for Thomas Jefferson Elementary's roofing replacement. Mr. Wallace?
Good evening, Dr. Jones, President White, Vice President Carlson, members of the board. Good to see you this evening. I told Dr. Jones when I came in, this was the first time in about 11 or 12 years that I enjoyed watching it snow, because I didn't have to worry about getting the snow plows hooked up, shovels out, salt, and no cancellation of school. So I actually enjoyed this snow, and it's already melted. So anyway, just wanted to bring to you the GMP for Thomas Jefferson Roofing Replacement Project. This project has been placed on the 10-year plan previously. This was an existing 25-year roof that has been spec'd out by the architects, has been sent to the appropriate individuals at the state level and at the city level for the approval of this project. We have received back that approval from the state. We solicited a few of the roofing companies that are part of the governmental purchasing network. We did select M2 Roofing out of Harrison, Arkansas for this project. If you remember a couple of years ago, they are the contractor that performed the work on Sugar Creek Elementary. So we have used them once before through a hard bid process, and we're now using them through the governmental cooperative purchasing network. We will, upon approval, begin this project in June and have it finished by the summer. It will entail a complete tear-off of the top covering of the roof. This roof presently does not have insulation on it, so we'll be adding anywhere from 12 to 24 inches worth of insulation value to this roof. Also putting a taper system on here that will help the drainage of that, along with the metal fascia, soffit, and the gutters and downspouts on this building. So tonight I am asking for action for the Board of Education to approve the GMP for the roof replacement project on Thomas Jefferson Elementary School as presented by M2 Roofing in the amount of $1,365,635 to be completed in the summer of 2021.
Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion from Joe.
Second.
Second from Matt. All right. We'll open it up for any comments or questions. Mr. Wallace.
I only have one question, Paul. So in the proposal that I was reading here, that there's a note that if additional deterioration is found, $4 per square foot, is that factored into the guaranteed maximum price? I don't know how that
There is some contingency that we put into this GMP. So we do have a contractor's contingency and an owner's contingency that will cover that cost. Okay. So we make sure that we look at the possible percentages of any bad areas, and it will be covered in the GMP cost. That is correct.
Paul, what's the shelf life on a 25-year roof is pretty impressive.
So the materials have changed over time, but right now we're using a product that is actually guaranteed for a 20-year product. It's called a 60 mil TPO. We have a variety. When I took over as director, there were a variety of roofing materials used. You can imagine with the age of the roof, from a terracotta ceramic to a old modified system where they put the tar and the gravel down, to EDPM rubber covering, to now a TPO roofing material that is supposed to be more fire resistant, and it holds up better in sun, and it's white, so it's more reflective. So in the darker roof days, it absorbed the heat. This is a reflective roofing material, and so that's what we're using. Did I answer your question?
I was just curious about that.
Oh, the shelf life. And so, you know, the workmanship, sometimes those are usually 1 to 2 year guarantee on the workmanship, but then we have a crew and my maintenance staff that their full-time job is almost working on roofing sections that separate and we maintain, and sometimes we have to get the work from an outside contractor to do that work. But
If I recall, that type of roofing basically it rolls over the top and there's a steam and there's some sort of like iron or hot.
It is. It's a heat welded type system to that. So it's kind of what has been used in the industry now for several years. It's susceptible to, you know, any kind of wind damage or hail damage like other roofing products. So, but we've been seeing about a good 18 to 22 years in that time span, which averages out to that 20.
Thank you.
Any update on what we can do with the federal COVID money? I know HVACs were in the mix. Is that definite?
Yes, you can do HVAC replacement with an ESSER money.
And with some ventilation stuff in roofs, can we do that?
We can give you a complete report on ESSER dollars and what those will be spent on. Basically, as long as you can make a case that it's related back to COVID recovery, whether that's air ventilation, whether that's instructional improvement, then that you can use the money for that.
I looked at the 10-year plan, and we had this at about $1.5 million, so it's a little less than about $200,000 less than we were anticipating.
Well, actually, we were anticipating doing a couple of roofs. We were looking at Lincoln Junior High. I'll just tell you right now, with the products, the labor force, the materials, the prices have definitely increased quite a bit, so almost doubled in price. So we have shelved the Lincoln Junior High School roof. We know it can get another year, and we're going to look at the pricing over the next year and see if that will, with the building materials, will come down somewhat. But yes, that was in hopes of getting a couple of roofs in this year, but the pricing was skyrocketed, gone up to about anywhere from 25 to 40% between materials and labor, and actually being able to get materials has been an issue.
I appreciate that. I think it's important for the board to understand that the materials costs are up like 200% in residential construction and commercial construction. So I did notice there was 2 schools on there, and I just wanted to clarify that. So I appreciate you letting us know that. All right, hearing none.
All right, this is item 7B to approve the roof for Thomas Jefferson. Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Calgar?
Yes.
Mrs. Faddis?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Lee says yes. Mr. White?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, carry 7-0.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to content agenda item C, budget and finance. Dr. Schwanheiser.
Good evening, President White, members of the board, and Dr. Jones. I'm here to present to you our financial statements for the end of period 9. We are 75% of the way through our fiscal year. Currently, our fund balance for all funds is at $70.3 million. This is about $10.4 million less than the prior year. This is due to 3 factors. We had some funds remaining in Fund 3, our building fund, to complete Grimsley Junior High. That is offset by an additional amount that we have, about $3.6 million in operating and $2.3 million in capital outlay. Looking more closely at our operating funds, right now our revenues exceed our expenditures by $3.7 million. Our fund balance is at $38.7 million. That's at 20.2%. Expect that to fall one more month for the month of April. Then we're going to have May and a large tax receipt, and our fund balance will then return back up. One more way to look at our health, let's look at our expenditures over prior year. We're up $2.6 million right now. Compare that to our revenues over prior year, we're up by $4.6 million. Our expenditures are in line with where we are at our school year at 62.6% of budget at 75% of the year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about our financial report.
Thank you. This comes to us as an action item, so I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. All right, any questions or comments about the budget and finance items? Going once. All right, that's a clean report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll go to vote.
All right, so this is for our budget and finance report. So, Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Calgar?
Yes.
Mrs. Faddis?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Lees is a yes. Mr. White?
Yes.
Carry 7-0.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to content item D, commencement review. This is for informational purposes. So Dr. Morrow, walk us through this. We're excited.
Hello, Chairman White. He was up there, now he's gone. Mr. Carlson, Dr. Jones, and members of the board. This is one of my favorite times of the year to get in front of you and share some general information about our high school students, but seniors in particular, and a little bit about commencement planning. If I can, first, some of those fun things and the good news you like to know about them. The first one, I'll tell you, I'm not sure if we told you last time or not, it's really about our juniors, but 29 of our 29 students who applied for the governor's school in the state of Arkansas were accepted. And the governor's school has 9 different areas where you can apply, and we have students enrolled in 8 of the 9 areas. So those areas are visual arts, instrumental music, English language arts, mathematics, cybersecurity, social studies, natural sciences, and choral music. The one area where we're not enrolled right now is drama. But that's 29 out of 29 enrollments, and so that's exciting for us. Fun fact number 2, I've got 10 of them. This also has some so those were juniors. Juniors and seniors will be in this second number. We have 10 perfect scores on the ACT. That's not something we've usually counted, looked at, and told you about. We were probably taking it for granted, but we've got 10, and some of those are at each high school. Perfect scores on the ACT. We probably have some out there that are perfect on the SAT too. I don't have that in front of me. Number 3, we had a Coca-Cola scholar at both of our high schools, 1 each at each high school. What's interesting about that is there are only 150 of those at all. And so 99,000 people apply for the Coca-Cola scholarships, and 150 are chosen in the end. And you have 2 of those here in town, 1 at each high school. And so that's exciting. Fun fact number 4, the University of Arkansas Fellowship Scholars Honors College Fellowships. We have 14 of those, some at each high school. And I don't have this year's totals from the college, but if it follows last year, we probably have about 16% of the total. They only had 88 last year. All of the fellowships for the Honors College. They did 72 for Arkansas residents last year and 88 total. So if those numbers hold true, we would have about 16% of the total. And that's a $72,000 scholarship for tuition, room and board, books. You can study abroad. What I love best is the chancellor tells us when they come and see us about how they can have private classes with the chancellor. And that's one of the neatest stories we hear when they sell that program. Fun fact number 5, you already know this one, National Merit. We had 25 semifinalists and 23 finalists. And there's another level of that you don't hear about every year. 4 of those got scholarships directly from National Merit Corporation. And that doesn't always happen for us because that is in an even more rare level of that achievement. Fun fact number 6, Gateway has already had 44 graduates this year because we graduate at Gateway in October and in December and at March. So they've had 44, and 23 of those have applied for NWTI. So delivering them to the next step of life and making sure they're not on someone's couch in September is the best way to do our business. Not just worry about graduation, but delivering them to a career or college. Number 7, BWHS College acceptances, y'all like to hear, and this is not conclusive, but some of the fun fact colleges that we have students accepted to for West is MIT, Caltech, Harvard, and the Naval Academy. There were 3 for Harvard. One of those will not accept and go to Harvard because she will go to MIT instead. And so it's a good problem to have right down the road. Fun fact number 8, BHS. So BHS, the fun fact colleges are Harvard, West Point, Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, Columbia. I could give you another short list that would be just as impressive, but that's just some of them. And number 9, we've had 2 different BWHS students go to Little Rock this year and do something very unusual. One of them got to speak in front of the State Board of Education last month, and she was talking about her experience with the United States Youth Senate program that she did last year. Normally it's a free trip for a week in DC. Hers was a remote experience, but they met Clarence Thomas and all of these fabulous people, and got to listen to leaders in our country. The second student didn't talk to the State Board of Education, but spoke with the Arkansas State Legislature, and that was on the topic of challenge scholarships, and gave them some information, and they actually voted the way that she was trying to persuade them. And so that leads me to number 10, and it's related to those concurrent challenge scholarships. So the challenge scholarship you get after you graduate. The concurrent challenge you can use while you're in school in our programs. And we have a $118,000 bill this semester for NWAC concurrent credit alone. We're a $118,000 customer, but 77% of that was covered by the concurrent challenge scholarship and other Ignite scholarships. So 66% was picked up by that new scholarship. We didn't have this a year ago. It's called Concurrent Challenge. And so that means out of $118,000, our families only paid 23% of that. And so we're real excited about that new program, and it's just kind of a fun fact to know. So that leads me to commencement, and this is our favorite time of the year. BHS will ask that you arrive your invitations, and all of your parking information are there. One school put it in the yellow envelope, one school put it flat with a paper clip. Arrive by 7:30 a.m. at Tiger Stadium for an 8 a.m. event, and that's for BHS. It should take closer to 90 minutes than 2 hours, so somewhere in that time frame for that event on Saturday, May 15th. A bright, sunny, 50-degree day. In a gown will be perfect, right? 50 degrees. BWHS is arrived by 6:30 p.m. at Wolverine Stadium for the 7 p.m. event that evening. If we'll go to the next slide. I was looking to see if I had rain. So my rain plan events for that, let's go back to the first one because I didn't write rain on here. The only thing that will be different in the event of rain is you might want to come 30 minutes to an hour earlier for BHS, because in the event of rain we'll be in the auditorium, and at 7 a.m. we will start running the live stream with speeches and choirs and things of that nature, and running families through one at a time in the event of rain. At West, we'll start at 6 p.m. in the auditorium running those speeches and choirs, so you might want to be there by 5:30 p.m. So in the event of rain, you'd want to arrive about an hour earlier than what we have listed if you're going to be with us the whole time. And so the families can sign up for their rain plan appointments, and they'll have appointments where they come in a time slot. Logistics, the parking passes and stage maps are in your packets. Your host that you will be meeting upon your arrival at BHS, that'll be at what we call the player gate, and that's John McElroy you'll be looking for. The player gate is between the main gate of Tiger Stadium and the TAC. And at West, if you'll go to the other end of the den, they have a nice entrance down there, not the football side, but the other end of the den. And Andrea Thompson is a fabulous librarian. It was National Librarians Day recently. Andrea Thompson will meet you there. Host will answer any questions prior to the event, and you'll hand out diplomas. BHS will use 2 lines like we have done in past years historically, and then students will exit at the center of the stage. BWHS will only use 1 line and exit to the side. To give you a little bit of an idea, in the stadium, our stages will back up to the tack or the den. And that's so that the tack or the den helps us with our acoustics there and our sound, so we're not bouncing off of that feature. But that'll give you an idea. That way people can sit on the visitor side or the home side at Tiger Stadium. They're going to be able to sit in the band bleachers if they want. The gates will open 1 hour prior to the event, and people can come in for first come, first serve seating. This is my favorite chart of the year. Do you all have a favorite graph in life? This is mine. And graduation history, I love it because you can see, you can't read it. And so I did bring some tiny little glasses up here. And that shows you all the way back to the year 2000 is on the 1998 is all the way on the left of that. And that was 314 graduates in 1998. We broke 500 in 2007. We broke 1,000 in 2017. And now we're at 1288. That's 752 for BHS and 536 for West. Those numbers change a lot right now. Total, you heard the number earlier from Gateway, but total, we've already got 71 early grads this year. So that is an overview for commencement.
That was a lot of great news. I don't even know where to begin on that, but this is an informational item, so we'll open it up for any comments, questions for Dr. Morrow.
The academic achievement numbers are breathtaking. The colleges where our kids are going, astounding. I mean, 16% of the honors fellowships at UA are from one district. That's an amazing data point. I mean, and it's great Twitter material. Thank you. One quick question. Is the population graduation at the 2 high schools about where you would expect it right now? I mean, we're about to dive into rezoning when you're done. I'd just be curious how you feel about the size of the 2 buildings' population.
We're in a great place in both of those, and we've identified room to grow over the years, and so we're very comfortable at this point.
Are there any attendance restrictions at graduation, for example? Can a student bring as many people as they want, or is there going to be limitations on that? Or?
We have not put any limitations on that. We're running this just like we, from an audience filling the stadium standpoint, we are running it just like we would have run a rivalry football game in 2019. We're going to open the gates an hour early. You come in, you find your seat, first come, first serve. We're not going to try to worry about their social distancing in the crowd. We are going to have the crowd wearing masks. On the field, we will have the majority of the time, you will not see graduates in a mask because they will be spaced out sufficiently. We will use the entire field to do that. It might be as much as a 10-foot square for a graduate on the west field and more like a 7-foot square at BHS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I know that this has been a roller coaster for you guys planning this year. As a senior mom, this excites me that we get to actually have a graduation. So thank y'all for all the hard, crazy work that you had to put into pivoting throughout this school year on what graduation was going to look like. So I know that causes a lot of stress. So thanks.
I like to talk about the heart of a senior mom. I know dads have big hearts too this time of year. Sometimes they leak out of your eyes. But prom was last Friday night. That's probably harder on the senior dad than it is the senior mom. But prom was last Friday night for BHS, and it'll be Saturday night, and it'll be this Saturday night for West. And so that's another exciting kind of benchmark for us to get through and go back to some normal things. Thank you.
I had one question. Number 6, you said you had 44 graduates from Gateway and that you're introducing them into NWTI. What does NWTI stand for?
Northwest Technical Institute, and so it's going to be everything from diesel mechanics to EMT work, things like that. Now that's just 44 early grads. Gateway is larger than ever. It's close to 200 students. And we will go back to, some of you are familiar with our old Gateway graduation ceremony that is individualized for them. That will be, it's so large this year, it will be at the West Cafeteria. So there is a date coming in early May for you for that. And some of you have really enjoyed that individualized event before.
Great, thank you.
Hey, I've got one question. We've also had some in the past, a special graduation for our special education department. Are we doing that, or are they going to participate in that? That is happening again. Okay. And you might find that, especially if we're in a rain plan, at the beginning, we will be funneling through some families with special needs, just so they're not left waiting or in crowds or things like that.
Can you send us meeting planners for the special ed graduations? I think probably most of us, we missed so much last year. I think we're all pretty aggressive about wanting to be at everything this year.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I just want to say something too. Sorry, I know you walked away, but thank you. I want to echo Mrs. Faddis' sentiments that you worked really hard to put this all together, and I'm super thankful that we're going to have an actual graduation for our students this year, and it's some semblance of normalcy, and so I'm ecstatic about that, because as you said, a dad, having gone through 2 graduations with my 2 older children, that was a special moment to have a real graduation, and this will be a special time for those families and students to have that opportunity. So thank you for that. And the growth of our student body count and the graduating class is just astounding when you see that mountain chart, and that is good and bad both, because we continue to grow, but it's exciting, and just the ability that we have to increase our graduation rate and continue to keep these students engaged. And I also wanted to point out the fact of encouraging students to find a path forward after school. That's so important. It's a big part of what we're doing here, is to make sure that we're making quality citizens that will be able to help us as a community to continue to be better. So thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, up next with another discussion item, item E, zone proposal. Mr. Hoover, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, President White, Vice President Carlson, members of the board, and Dr. Jones. I think Thomas has some things up there for me. I'm going to be talking to you tonight, obviously, about a proposal for elementary number 13 that will open in 22-23 school year. A couple things just for you. I have provided you at your table a black folder with some documents. On one side you have the PowerPoint presentation. On the other you have 4 to 5, I think 4 maps that are going to help you take a look at some things with me. I'll be using a couple different formats for you tonight to show you the zoning proposals. One will be some in front of you in the board packet. Other will be on the screen using our GIS program if needed. And I did have some large prints made for aesthetic purposes. Obviously, they're sitting there behind Mr. Quinn and Mr. Calgar. They'll be hard to see, but those are the exact same things that are in your packet. So don't stress your eyes out trying to find, or break your neck trying to look behind you guys, because it's in your packet as well. Let me get this going here. Again, obviously, our purpose is tonight so you can see the proposed zone for elementary school 13 and 22-23. I do want to remind the board of a few objectives as we move into the presentation. Obviously, a big one is that we keep neighborhoods united. We are considering future growth. Obviously, thinking about previous rezones are part of the thought pattern, and of course, including maximum Bella Vista families in Cooper Elementary. this first slide, you've seen this in your packet, but also you should have seen this in maybe some of you if you had the pre-board readings. A couple things I want to say about that before I get into this slide specifically. One, from what was posted on board docs about a week or so ago, week and a half ago, I have updated a few things. So in case you see any changes, I want to make sure you know that's why. These are more current numbers as of April 14th. Obviously, I'm trying to keep as up to date as possible. And with general enrollment starting on April 1st, 2 weeks later, numbers for next year building, which is a starting point for our proposal, change quite a bit. So I adjusted these numbers to look at it. But this data in front of you here, and that is on your presentation, is current this year numbers. This is the 2021 school year numbers as of April 14th, 21. And you know our schools' capacities are at the top there, what our schools can handle, our current 12 schools. Then that's the enrollment of April 14th, that day. And then I wanted to point out that percentage of capacity of where our schools are running right now. Obviously, some of y'all know some of our schools are running a pretty high capacity at this point, which is why we're going to be building this new school in 22-23. That's just an important reference point for you to know where things are at right now as we get into the proposal. Now, from this point moving forward, I'm going to show you a few more slides that are about current, but then after that, I'll show you a few pictures. We're going to get into next year building data. That is a baseline for the proposal of the new zone. Okay, does that make sense so far? A few things, and you have this in your packet. This is a current zone look. This is our current elementary zone. You know this. You approved this 3 years ago when we added Evening Star. But this also shows you with those little black dots. I know it's hard to see on the screen or on your packet. Those little black dots represent areas where our students are living. And it starts showing a saturation of where our students are living. And then here in a moment, I'll show you some growth going on in our current zone look. So the current zone look that you have in front of you, and there's a little legend there at the bottom you can take a chance to look at. It gives you a little color ramp of which each zone looks like. So obviously, if you look at, you have the little more brownish colors, Apple Glen, and then you can read through. One little small correction for you on this, because this is an old shape file that I pulled up. If you see the HXES, that was referring to when we still called it Haxton Elementary. That is Evening Star. That was an old shape file that I drew from that I did not see the HX until I had them printed very nicely, of course. But so that HX is our elementary 12, Evening Star Elementary. That will be obviously not in the next few slides, but it's there for right now in front of you. But this is the current zone. And the next image is kind of a review, but also kind of starts going into some looking at the future a little bit. In this slide here, you see these red shapes, red polygons. Some friends of mine over at Bentonville City Planning and Centerton City Planning specifically, in their GIS coordination, helped me add these files to our presentation. You can start seeing these are developments taking place in Bentonville and Centerton that are going forward. These can range from anywhere from 25 residential houses or above, or it could be apartment complexes, things of that nature. Obviously, you might not see any red polygons or shapes in Bella Vista. I do want to point out that's because Bella Vista is obviously a planned community, and that's more about the residential lot that's already planned. And while we have that information data, it will not show up as a shape on this file. But you start seeing in this type of image where the growth and development is taking place inside of Bentonville proper and then Centerton proper specifically, because that's where some of our large residential growth is taking place. Let me keep moving forward a little bit. For image purposes, and I'll explain this as we go along, I'll show you the impacts and all the different numbers and things. This is the look, and this is a slide you have, or sorry, a map you have of the proposed zone. The big change here, and that proposed zone also shows in those little black dots that you see on the map, that also shows next year building numbers. Before I added any kind of growth multiplier, that shows next year building numbers already attached to next year. Now, while the school won't open until 22-23, like I said, I wanted to have that data there so you can start seeing where the saturation points are in this proposal. So obviously a major portion you're going to see is that southwestern, and in that screen it looks, I'm going to call it purplish pinkish for lack of a better word. Maybe on your map, it might be more of a, I think on your map, it's going to look a little bit more red-pink. It's also on the maps behind you. But that southwestern area will be the new zone, or proposed zone, proposed zone for Elementary 13. That will be located at the corner of Southwest Opal and Southwest Barron Street. And while it's difficult to see the pinpoint of where the actual school is, if you look close enough at your map, it is there. And I can also toggle over to a different map, and I'll do that for a second so I can kind of show you. I'm going to move around a little bit here and go into our GIS platform. And make sure I want you to understand something. The colors that you will see on the screen now using the GIS platform will be different than the color ramp that you're seeing in front of you on print, because it's a published and unpublished version. So in this little area, this is more this orangish color is Elementary 13. And if I scroll in, this is our location of Elementary 13 right here. Kind of, I would maybe a little bit, right or north and east of center of this zone. There's obviously the regional airport. But this is the kind of where I want you all to start looking at how we got here. This is the big change, obviously, from the current zone to this zone. A lot of moving pieces had to take place to get this drawn out, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. But it gives you a visual look of that. You can even see there in that kind of light green on the screen or on your paper, it's more of a orangish color, tan color. That is your Central Park zone. That changes drastically to make the new school zone the way it is. And you can kind of see some different ways how it wraps around that purplish/red on your print, and that is Evening Star. So there's some adjustments being made here that I'll explain through one at a time. That's why I want to start looking at that visual a little bit. Okay? Let me toggle back over to the presentation. Again, this is kind of a side-by-side look of current zone and a proposed zone for our elementary schools, obviously inclusive of Elementary 13. And you don't have this in front of you that way, but you do have two maps in front of you. You can look side by side. Biggest change would be that big south and western and southwestern portion of our school boundaries.
And can you start as you go?
Yes, sir.
This means what will go where?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's coming.
That language?
Yes, sir. I sure will. So I'll be there, Mr. Quinn, I'll be there in just a second. So the impacted schools, as I mentioned before a few months ago to you when I talked about what impacts would look like, I want to talk about the schools that are impacted and the schools that aren't impacted in this proposal. You see in front of you the impacts, but I do want to bring up that Cooper Elementary, Apple Glen Elementary, Sugar Creek, and R.E. Baker Elementary are not impacted directly from this school. There were no adjustment to their zone lines, which does mean 8 of our 12 schools will have an adjustment made to build this new zone. So that's 2/3 of our schools. I think it was mentioned a while back that this would be pretty complex, and I believe it is, because we're impacting a lot of different areas to make this work. So let me scroll down here, and I'll be right there, Mr. Quinn, with what it means there. This data piece is the projection of capacity enrollment of Elementary 13. The top 3 boxes represent next year building data. That's what we currently have in the system as of April 14th of our student information across our schools. Our capacity, that didn't change. It adds Elementary 13 in there on the far right column, a capacity of 730 students. The enrollment number as of April 14th for next year's building. And then also I added the current free and reduced rate. There was a point of interest being requested there, so I put the current free and reduced rate on that data piece as well. The bottom 3 boxes, or really bottom 2 boxes, but there's 3 pieces of information, are projected enrollment. Basically, you're taking your enrollment of next year's building from the above box, enrollment 21-22, with the multiplier of 3.5%, and you get the projected enrollment of 22-23. Then a projected percentage of capacity based on the school's capacity with obviously the inclusion of Elementary 13, and then a projected free and reduced rate, and that's obviously by the fact that these students will be shifting around and then changing the free and reduced rates of the different schools. I just want to point out from previous slide, if you remember, a few slides up, and you have the presentation in front of you, you saw those capacities that were hitting 98s and 97s. Some of our schools like Evening Star and Willowbrook. And this projection would take us where we have, and it wasn't necessarily trying to just get a good old average. That's because we're still looking at all these growth opportunities that are going to be taking place over the next few years. Some of these numbers had to come down to where there is room to grow. And we have had some efforts in here, which I'll see in a moment, that shows you where we're pulling from to even get some more centralized schools numbers up a little bit. And so that's all in here right there. So that being said, and I know I'm going to go to this right here. This is where we start talking about, okay, this is what it all means. This is the impact overall. For example, I'll read it to you. Elm Tree Elementary, there are students that are currently zoned for Elm Tree that will now, in this proposal, be zoned for Thomas Jefferson. It impacts about 36 students. And that's a neighborhood name there would be the Angel Falls area. And so, for example, what Mr. Quinn was asking, let me toggle back over to our GIS deal. And what I'm specifically talking about when I talk about that Angel Falls 36 students is up in this area right through here. Currently, there's Elm Tree, and TJ is not showing up in here, but this is the TJ zone right here, so it's going to be somewhere over here. Sorry, my bad. TJ's over here, but this is the TJ zone. So this is an impact area right here of these houses, and I can walk them through there for you, but I do want to give you time to take a look at these impact areas that these are the changes being made to the 8 schools to build the new elementary 13, but also changes that took place, whether it be to for students, so we can maximize our capacities, equal that out as best we could. Students, obviously for different reasons, move in the different neighborhoods because of saturation points around schools. You probably saw, and I'll show this again to you, in the above slide on this right here, when you start seeing, and you have it in print, when you start seeing these reach arounds of, let's say, the Evening Star zone, the reason why those things are taking place, and we're going to see it in a couple areas, is because the saturation around that school is getting so dense. And that's part of that density population map that I had earlier on for you. So a lot of information, but this is where we start talking about the impacts of where and who is impacted by this zone. These are, for example, some bigger ones here would be to build the new elementary zone. You can see that 206 students from areas around the Southland. There's a Tamaron. It's kind of south of 102 and north of 570. That's a lot of students being impacted that were currently in the Senator Gamble zone. Currently in the Central Park zone. So these are the impact areas that I bring to your attention. Now, with each one of these, we can go through, if you want, I can take you through where these are located at so you can see it on a map and see the impact. These are the numbers of the impacts. I can show you on the map where these are, and we can go through those. So I'll give you a few moments to look at that. And if there's any particular place you want to see, I can scroll over our GIS and kind of take you through where that's located at and maybe some more reasoning behind why that particular move. So I'll give you all a moment to look.
What is our target for capacity? When do we start scratching our head? When do we start scratching our head on, hey, this one elementary school is getting up too high? Are we shooting for 80%? I noticed in there a minute ago.
No, I would say we're shooting more for, obviously, more like 85%.
Okay.
But because of some of these situations, we are, in the growth that's coming, they're a little lower than 85% on some of them. But going back to that one slide, or where the development's going to be, that could fill it pretty quickly. This is based on projected numbers as of like next year, plus that multiplier. There are areas that could far exceed that. But that why we have a little bit of a cushion there for the growth.
Think for the future and the growth.
Yes, sir. That's planning for, and it's looking at the future.
Have we taken a look at neighborhoods or areas that have been impacted by rezoning recently that are currently going to be involved in this?
You mean previous rezones that are now going to be rezoned again?
Right. I'm not looking for 10 years ago. I'm just curious about.
Yes, sir.
Last 2 or 3 rezones we've done.
So
any
there,
of the impacted areas previously?
yes, sir. We have looked at several. The example would be when we built Evening Star. Let me kind of scroll down here if you don't mind me playing with this for a little bit. Obviously, a lot was rezoned around this area right here, and there were some neighborhoods that got shifted into Evening Star, such as ones that might be now requested to shift back or shift into Central Park. So we have looked at those and the impacts that might mean on those families if they were living there at the time and now still living there. We have this discussions about those.
Like the Liberty Bell,
Yes, sir.
Hearthstone area over there.
And that's all right in this area right here, sir. Right. Yeah. That's an example of looking at some previous zone locations.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What you're on right now,
Yes, ma'am.
do parents have access to that?
No, ma'am. This is
That's what I thought.
yeah.
So here's a frustration that I had as a parent through all I've got my glasses on
Mhm.
and I can't make heads or tails out of what roads are where on
Sure.
these. And I know that's a frustration. I've already, this at church this weekend, had a friend who's concerned about rezoning, just wanting the information where, because nobody can read these. Nobody can zoom in and see their street, especially when they're on the line. Is there any way that we can make something more available where people can zoom in, see their, because you can zoom in on this, but it just, as blurry as can be. And I know parents get very frustrated because I would say the vast majority don't listen to the board meetings. They go by looking at the website. They don't hear all the conversation. And then there's a lot of confusion because they can't make heads or tails out of this. And I think that, one, I love the fact that we're proactively doing this. That did not happen years ago when we used to rezone so much at all. And that was very frustrating for parents. This is my, 14th year in the district. So I remember those days that it was complete and utter game for you. Remember those days, Matt? The chaos of parents just not knowing and being scared where their kid's going to go, how many kids are going to go with them. So is there any way we can make that more available, something like that, not necessarily that, but a parent can zoom in, see, so it could alleviate some of the fear concerns about, I don't really know where I'm going yet.
Two things I might say to that. The first one would be that, and it's not going to be all the time, but on May 5th and May 12th, I'll be taking this to community forums. I'll mention that later, but I'll mention it now. And I'll be over at Bentonville West and at BHS Aaron Arts Center. And I'll be using this as a tool to help parents if they have specific questions for input and things like that. So that's one opportunity where I could get a little more zoomed in on them, because I know the maps that you see right there, those are hard. That's why I have this for you guys tonight. The other part would be, I don't know right now how I could make this an opportunity, but there are other ways. I can talk to some friends that, I can talk to a good friend of mine to help me out, a GIS coordinator. I'll look into that.
Thank you. And I don't want to take away from anything.
No, I understand.
I know the work that, and I didn't know until you get in this position. And I want to assure parents who are listening to this, you don't realize how much work goes in. Nobody's sitting around just saying, okay, we're going to move kids around. And this is evident of that. So thank you for all the work, Mr. Hoover.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I just know parents do get frustrated not being.
I don't want to oversimplify it, Ms. Fast, but one thing that you learn when you start messing with all these GIS systems is that there are some available things out there for free, and I will not do any plugs here, but a Google map, if you have access to that out, you can type in addresses and you can see, and then you can maybe do some comparison notes. If you had this presentation, which our public will have, and they do have through board docs, and then I do things on community forums that could give them some help, but I'll look into it more deeply.
I know previously we used to have kind of an address locator type of system where if you type in your address and it would just say where you're currently at, where you're proposed to go to. I mean, that kind of eliminated all that confusion.
We currently do have the address locator on our transportation. It's on our main website under transportation. And when we rezoned last time, we put up the pre-zoned. If there's a way that we can locate that and have very clearly this is the rezone, but keeping our current zone in place, then that's the way we would do it. So we'll follow up on that.
Cool. One of the systems that we use for that is this Guide K-12 system, Mr. Burgess. And I'll look into how we can have maybe obviously our current zone that's out there where people look at their addresses, and then obviously a future one. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
Student impact overall is a great chart. Now, that's pretty understandable. Let me ask you, and again, very clean, very understandable, but like Evening Star sending 195 to Central Park, great, I understand. Liberty Bell South, Hearthstone, Stratzman Lane, great, understandable, but do you have, I'm assuming we have people who live outside of clearly defined neighborhoods. So like, sort of to Jennifer's question, like, so are we just kind of ballparking those are the big neighborhoods in a given move? Like, are there others not in that cluster of neighborhoods?
Yes, sir. I'm going to do a little manipulation here and show y'all something. If you don't mind, give me a moment to do a little configuring. And let's see here. I'm going to zoom in on New Elementary 13 without getting too big. And what this data tells me is what the effect size of just this zone and where clusters of students may be. You get in some of our more rural areas out here. They're not necessarily neighborhoods. They're based on, maybe they're north of 102, or there's not a defined neighborhood name yet. Or they're just pockets of kids, or maybe there's one or two kids out here in our southern boundary. These were students that, if I'm answering your question correctly, Mr. Quinn, this is where you could see specifically, as I scroll in, names of streets.
I got you. So,
and the impact of those areas.
So a big circle probably has a neighborhood name, right? Now we're down into like 47. Back up.
That's actually, no, it's not necessarily a name. That's just, they're just pulling from a different perspective of the population of that area. So it's just a zooming in out toggle type deal. So that 47 then breaks down into, there's 14, 6, 2, 3. It's not necessarily, so it's all that area that falls in this, I'm not really, I don't remember off the top of my head which one this is. I have it listed on the other format, but I know I'm out here in this Silver Meadows, Woodward Hills, north of Vaughn, west of 365 range, and there's 365. So not really a defined neighborhood name to my knowledge at this point, but this area gives me an idea of where the students are located at when I'm talking about this. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So on the chart, I like the student impact overall. You show 1156 total of number of students impacted, correct?
Should be 1,100. Made a small adjustment.
Okay.
So 1156 was a last week number. 1,100 is this week number, and I'll explain why.
Okay, but before you go explaining that, so, but again, in the 1,100 is everybody, right?
Yes, sir.
So you've ballparked, if Copper Oaks is on my chart at 56, you've kind of ballparked into that number, those around Copper Park. Is that Copper Oaks?
That would be specifically for that number. If it's a single, if I said just Copper Oaks and I put a 56 by it, that is specifically about that particular area.
But 1,100 is the universal number right now?
1,100 is the bigger number of the total impact of this entire zone proposal.
Okay,
yes, sir.
Totally moved. We're moving 1,100.
Yes, sir. That's the proposal.
Mr. Hoover, I've got a couple of questions. I assume we partnered with transportation to make sure we're not putting any more strain or stress on our bus routes.
Yes, sir.
The reason I ask is I was looking at Angel Falls, and we're pulling 37 kids, I think, out of Angel Falls, which is pretty close to Elm Tree, and then we're taking them across 71 Business into TJ now. So that, to me, that looks like it's going to, from a transportation perspective, that doesn't make sense to me. If we're moving 37 kids that are pretty close to Elm Tree, none of them may ride the bus. I don't know, but I just want to make sure that we partnered with transportation and feel good about the zones.
Yes, sir. We have. Let me address that a little bit. And so, part of the movement of the reason why we need to look at some of the Elm Tree zone to move into, let's say, Thomas Jefferson, is the impact what's happening around Centerton Gamble and how saturated around Centerton Gamble our school growth and projection is. Centerton Gamble, my projection is going to get real dense, real tight. You can see all the rooftops out there when you're just at our high school alone, or if you're in the Centerton Gamble parking lot. So we've had to make some adjustments, and two of them on there are this. we actually drew a little bit, we drew some back into Elm Tree from like the Talamore, Stonebriar, Oak Ridge area. But then because of that situation, trying to reduce Centerton Gamble, the offset was then we filled up Elm Tree too much. We needed to get some students over to TJ. But yes, I actually have Mr. Deron Moss here from Transportation. That's, you know, he could definitely address that. We have had those conversations. And some next steps, Mr. Calgar, would be once we get further into the proposal and then some more input, we'll be going and putting this also in our GIS program we use for transportation to make sure it all works out well. I've done some mapping on distance on some of these changes. And right now, I think probably our biggest increase of distance of a drive with just simple looking at how it actually could work.
Sure.
It's about 1.5 miles increase.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
Okay. The other question I have is, well, when we put this boundary into effect, the new boundary, will we have any kid at all that is overflowed to a different school? Will we have any kids other than employees for the district, right, that may have their kid go to this school, but they live in this zone? But from my understanding, we still have a few overflow kids right now that go to a different school outside of their boundary. Will we have any of that?
Well, based on the numbers they gave you in projections, you saw that kind of rubbed on 80. I don't think we'll have that, barring some kind of just monstrous growth that we couldn't have foreseen, even though we do look at, and you've seen the projected growth areas. I don't think we will have that problem. Not when you're, I mean, example, I'll use Willowbrook. The percentage is pretty high right now, about 98%. I think I have it down as proposed around 80%.
Mm-hmm.
That gives them some area. And while there's still growth there, that gives them area to grow as well. So we won't have to do the overflow.
Okay.
Can I speak to that just a little bit? There's always the possibility of overflow because we face this every year. If, for example, you have 60 spots for kindergartners and you have 61 kids, we're faced with putting that one last move in hiring a teacher for one student or putting them in another school where a spot is available. And so probably every year we have a little bit of overflow. Okay. And then the other part, Willie, you brought up a really good point, and it's the hardest for parents to understand. It's hard for us to understand. How can I be so close to a school like you talked about, Angel Falls and Elm Tree, and I have to go all the way to Sugar Creek or TJ? I think that one's TJ. And it's because we're faced with the challenge of the lack of students in downtown. So we're having to go out and pull kids into some of our downtown schools. If we don't do that, we're going to have our downtown schools so small and the other schools outside so large. And so we're still faced with that challenge, and we have been for a long time. You'll see that come up again, okay? And it's an effort to make room in the Elm Trees out there, Centerton Gamble's where they're over, and pull some of those kids back into Sugar Creek and TJ.
Okay, thank you. I agree. Centerton Gamble, I was out there this week, and I couldn't believe how many houses were being built around the school. It is unbelievable.
Yes, sir.
But thank you for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you see that growth at Centerton Gamble. The same thing's going to happen at Elementary 13. I was out there today, and I drove by, and you go down, I don't know what street it is, and there's a curbed and guttered subdivision. And so I made some calls, and yes. And that's 240 lots, I think, and they're getting ready to break ground on vertical construction. They're figuring that out. So it'll be a matter of time till that side of town has got rooftops everywhere too. So this consistent growth that we're experiencing is always going to plague us. And I think y'all have done a really good job on identifying the smoothest transition for families. Mr. Hoover, and I want to put this back out so the board heard, you did offer to run us through any of these neighborhoods that were affected by this. Is there anybody that wants to see any specific neighborhood on this list and how it's being affected, where it is in relation to its old school, new school?
I do, actually. Could you scroll down up to 72 in Centerton, and where right now they used to be, I've got some people asking about that. They used to be Centerton Gamble, then now they're at TJ. I'm just wondering if this is going to affect it or not. Greenstone is that subdivision.
It's further up.
All right, so real quick,
Further up 72. It's at the edge of the at the edge of the line. So in the pink or the purple. And I'm not
right
sure
through here, you mean?
it's
This is 72 right through here.
right. Is purple TJ?
Yes, this is right here. This is Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. So they'll be
This was not including any adjustment this time.
Okay.
The only adjustment that would have been made there was really no adjustment made from Centerton Gamble to TJ at all. It was Centerton Gamble to Elm Tree, and that would be this area right through here. I'm going to close a few things out so I can be a little more specific on. That's going to just get real busy. But this area right through here, Ms. Fass, is the area that I was speaking that was Centerton Gamble these last few years. Uniquely, they were actually in Elm Tree before Evening Star. Now we're moving them back.
Okay. Thank you.
I think you've done a nice job holding neighborhoods together. And I always say to people, I believe we pay the teachers the same and the principals the same. We have quality employees at every school building. So I think we're going to offer your kid the same thing at any building. Mm-hmm. But I do understand your desire to have the kid across the street who's your kid's best friend that you're going to school together. So I think you've done a nice job with that. I would also say, and I'm not faulting you for this, but clearly we have given up on free and reduced lunch balance. Because there was a time many years ago that was a big topic with this board. But when we look at a variance of 2% to 35%, those days are pretty much gone.
In the history with zoning in the district, we never set that as a priority in the way that we zone. We set neighborhoods, keeping neighborhoods together.
Yeah, but I'm talking even before you. I mean,
maybe before.
I remember in my early days, and help me here, Brent, that free and reduced lunch balance was a bit of a topic. And I'm not faulting you that we can't do it anymore. It's just 2 to 35 is a big number.
Well, and it is a consideration, but it is not the priority for zoning. Now, if you look at some of the corrections made, if you look at Mary May and how that poverty percentage is reduced with the new rezone, so there is attention paid to that.
Yeah, and again, I'm not criticizing.
I don't take it that way, but it's always been a topic of conversation, and we always pay attention to it. But we just, for a long time, we haven't carved out, and we've kept neighborhoods together as priority.
Yeah, and I'm not going to take us up, but I remember we would also talk about that. The foundation helped us offset the fact that we had really PTOs raising a ton of money and PTOs raising much less money. Again, I'm not going to divert us.
I think it's very nicely done, Mr. Hoover. Communication with the community is going to be key on this.
Yes, sir.
We're notifying people more than a year out so they can make decisions on any housing moves that they want to make, but very nicely done.
Just one thing I'll mention, and then I can put that back on there. I kind of mentioned this earlier, Mrs. Faddis. This is review. Obviously, I want to, we're doing this tonight. We're doing a proposal. In May 5th at Aaron Arts Center at BHS at 5:30. May 12th at Bentonville West Performing Arts Center at 5:30. We'll be advertising this out to our public very soon through Ms. Wright and her department. Those will be days where I'll invite our communities to come see this proposal. I'll have the same opportunity for them to see this, and of course, I can show them maybe a little more specifics if they want to look at that. I'll have that Guide K-12 program, that GIS program up there. And then, as you know, once we've had this proposal and community input opportunities, we'll bring back to you in June a proposal for board approval. Those are just next steps I wanted to point out. But at the same time, I'd have this up here if there's anything else y'all want to ask about these particular areas.
Just clarifying, this says 5:30 a.m. I'm assuming it means p.m.
I'm sorry.
In case anybody's reading it, I just want to make sure because I don't think anybody's going to be there here at 5:30 a.m.
If I go at 5:30, I'll be very lonely. 5:30 p.m. Sorry for the typo. I apologize.
I certainly appreciate your diligence on this. Again, this is impactful. 1,100 families are impacted. So this is a good step. I appreciate the communication plan as well. So any other questions or comments before we let Mr. Hoover off the hook for tonight? All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, that ends the content agenda. It goes to board member comments. Out of sight, out of mind, I was going to call on Eric first because he hardly ever gets to speak first, but I don't see him up there. Oh, there he is. Eric, I neglected in my haste to lead this meeting to acknowledge that you've stepped aside. You were virtual, but you were going to let me lead it, and I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. But do you have any comments for tonight?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I'll start by saying great job. Willie's world record for a board meeting was not in jeopardy, but you did an excellent job leading the team tonight, and I appreciate you stepping in. Thank you. I had to close my monitor as I was looking at the slides. They were actually like in reverse, like I was looking at them from the backside. So I was trying to read as you went through, but I had no comments other than that. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back down to our general lead off. Willie, you have any comments from tonight?
No, sir, not tonight.
All right. Joe?
Just a couple things.
All right.
Number one, one of the first things you do when you get elected to the school board is you go through your new school board training, and they go down to Little Rock and you spend half a day or longer sitting around talking about what you just got yourself into. I remember the first one I went to, the only initial one I went to, they had a session on it was a mock school board, and they talked a little bit about public comment. And the first comment out of the Arkansas School Board Association was, why would you ever want to do that? Why would you ever want to have public comment? And I was sitting there going, well, why wouldn't you want to have public comment? And it's an opportunity for people to come in and express what their viewpoints are, whether you agree with them or not agree with them. But at that point, 8-9 years ago, the general consensus was from the School Board Association, don't do it. Just another can of worms you're opening up for yourself. And at that, we were obviously, the policy was to have public comment in our district, and there's certainly been longer days because of that, longer meetings because of that. But just like tonight, it gives an opportunity for people that have opinions related to whatever the subject matter is in our district to come in and voice those and to be heard. So I appreciate the people who came and spent the time coming here with their families and sharing their thoughts and opinions. That's one of the great things about our democracy is people have that option. And I appreciate them coming tonight and sharing those thoughts. A couple weeks ago, spring break was here. Unfortunately, I had a friend of mine who lost a 21-year-old son who drowned down in Panama City, Florida. And I contacted Debbie earlier today a little bit about our curriculum. He died of a thing called shallow water blackout, which is a syndrome where kids are, people that really actually swim really well, have a blackout while they're swimming, and they actually go into some sort of like seizure state, and it's got a 90% fatality rate. And it's simply brought on by people who literally hold their breath too much. And then it puts a stress on your body, and then it becomes a neurological issue. And unfortunately, the people that go through that particular issue, it's got about 90% fatality rate. And so one of the questions I posed to Dr. Jones was, do we have anything in our curriculum that addresses that type of education? It seems like a pretty easy thing that maybe we can inform our kids about, especially with summertime. And obviously, my favorite game growing up was always trying to see how long I could hold my breath. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that can also be deadly. So it is also one of the things that is mandatory for people that are going through basic training in the military. They go through training on that as well. So it's kind of interesting. But unfortunately, a friend of mine lost their 21-year-old son to that. They actually were on the Good Morning America show on Saturday morning Michael Phelps is one of the spokespersons for that particular blackout syndrome. So just want to make everybody aware of that, and it's worth checking out. It was nice to see prom go on this past weekend. I can only imagine the dress market in Northwest America, or Northwest Arkansas, is flourishing right now. That and boys' shoes in color red, green, black, yellow, and orange. It looked like everyone was wearing sporty shoes, but also looked like everybody was having a great time. So it was nice that they had that opportunity and to celebrate together. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. It's good. Brent?
Yeah, thank you. So, Matt, that's terrible. I hate that happened, but thank you for bringing awareness to that. That's an important topic. Well, obviously, want to congratulate the graduates. 2021 made it through a very difficult year, and I'm glad to see that it feels like that maybe light is at the end of the tunnel, and we're at the end of this thing. And so excited for the end of school activities, different programs that will be taking place, and hopefully many of us will get to join in on some of those end of school curricular activities, and excited for those to take place. And of course, I've got a scripture reference tonight, and hopefully it brings some solace to kind of the moments. To Matt's point, I do agree that I appreciate that we allow public comment, and that we allow for public discourse to take place, and I think that's very important. I always encourage parents to take advantage of that, or constituents that are just wanting to speak to us, to feel free to come and share openly, and take advantage of their 3 minutes and time to be heard. But the scripture reference tonight is one that I posted on my Instagram account, and it's in Proverbs 10:12. Says, "Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses." I really like reading it out of the Passion Translation, and I think it really kind of hits home with some thoughts that I'm wanting to express in my time tonight. Hatred keeps old quarrels alive, but love draws a veil over every insult and finds a way to make sin disappear. So I know there's a lot of passionate comments and thoughts and concerns during the current debate that we're in the midst of, but I'm hopeful that those words will serve to be expressive of my heart, is that we can just show love and empathy through all situations, and that in that we'll be able to throw a veil over it with the veil of love, and just get us through this last few weeks, and get through this last little bit, and better times are ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Jennifer?
I just have a couple things. One, we're almost there. School's almost over, and I know everybody wants to celebrate. And I just want to thank our teachers and our staff for getting us to this point. It's been a year, unlike I think anybody has ever experienced, and a testament to our teachers and staffs in the school that have done their best and worked their hardest to make it as normal as possible in a crazy situation. And also to our administration staff to work on a prom and a graduation ceremony that is a normal thing, as much as normal can be. I know there's been so much planning and blood and sweat and tears into all that. So thank you for all of the work you have put into this. I know that our parents and our kids are very appreciative of that. So I just want to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dr. Jones, do you have anything?
I just have a couple of things. First of all, a lot of the virtual students came on campus to test in the last couple of weeks, and they were so happy to be back in person. One student that got out at TJ raised his hands out and said, "I've missed you. Have you missed me?" I think he was talking to the school building. And then today, Mayor Ormond shared the Spirit of Bentonville Award with one of our teachers, Leslie Morse. She, along with 3 other women, founded Perspectability. And you might have heard of the Tulip Farm. Okay, so that is theirs, and that is for students with neurodiversities. As adults, they learn how to work the Tulip Farm, and so it's gone very well. And they were the Spirit of Bentonville recognized group today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'll keep mine short. A lot of positive things were discussed tonight. Dr. Morrow stole the show with a list of 10 and then getting to walk us through what we all are really excited for is graduation this year. So that's really exciting. We have teacher appreciation coming up. I think you should appreciate our teachers every day. And then even the recognition for Mr. Penn, John, I think his comments were really impactful and powerful. And it showed someone that was competent at their job. I mean, I think you could have ended there and given him applause, but he also showed concern and care for others, and I think that's really big right now. So that's all I have, and right now the board that is present in person will retire to executive session to consider matters of personnel. We will reconvene to vote on any decisions made. Thank you. All right, the board has now returned from executive session. I will entertain a motion to approve the items that were discussed.
So moved.
Motion from Matt, a second from Willie. Brent?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
That's approved. All right, I'll accept a motion to end the meeting. Motion to adjourn. Second from Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.